So a couple point of orders for everybody, just if you could please have yourself on mute, because we do have a rather large group tonight with several presentations, and then we won't have any background noise going on. So if you are not presenting, if you could be on mute. And then when it comes time to, if you have questions afterwards, if you are on a computer, you will see a reactions section down in the lower right-hand corner, and you can use that to give us a wave as to be able to raise your hand, or obviously you can take yourself off of mute. It's just a little bit harder for everybody to hear at that point. And then that way we don't have to talk over each other. But with such a large group, that's probably the easiest way to try to manage any questions that we have. And if you don't have the reactions button because you're on a phone or an iPad, then you're just going to have to unmute yourself and give a little raise of the hand so we can acknowledge you. All right.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Byers. Can everyone hear me? Can you hear me, Jen? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to call the Amity Regional Board of Education special meeting to order for Monday, November 23rd. It is now 6:33. The first order of business is our Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, so Dr. Byers, our third item on the agenda is the 2021-2022 budget presentations. I see we have a number of groups from the high school as well as the two middle schools with us tonight. Would you like to take the lead on that?
Yes, absolutely. So earlier in the year, the Board of Education had requested that we have some presentations from our administrators, whether they're the school administrators or the district-based administrators, to kind of get an idea of where we start our budgets with, because oftentimes in the past we have come to the board after having already made some reductions. And so the board hasn't really had a chance to get a full appreciation of everything that's been requested, or to understand the types of cuts that have been made before we even start to present a somewhat finalized budget to the board. So this evening we have the first of two sort of groups of budget presentations that we will be bringing to you. And we will have Dr. McPadden presenting for curriculum and staff development, Mr. Goodwin presenting the budget for athletics, Mr. Martoni presenting the budget for facilities, and then Mrs. Burke and Dr. Tracy will team up and present the budgets for our two middle schools. Each presentation is somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes. They're really trying to highlight the things that are the drivers of the budgets for next year. And then I would say at the end of each presentation, perhaps we can have some time if you have any questions, keeping in mind again that this is a very big overview and a broad first stroke to give an appreciation for what the budget is. And we'll certainly get into the details as we move into our December and January budget meetings. So I am going to turn it over to Dr. McPadden to get us started.
Thank you, Dr. Byers. Good evening, board members. We're happy to share with you tonight. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So we're going to go through the curriculum and staff development budget for 2021-2022. Basically, the curriculum, there's a curriculum side to the budget and there's a staff development side. The following drivers are for the curriculum side, and they include the summer curriculum writing, instructional program improvements, travel, conferences, and instructional supplies, including STAR assessments. These are the drivers, and this is the breakdown over here. So for summer curriculum, that really, summer curriculum writing has really increased by $26,000 from last year's budget. We have an understanding by design curriculum philosophy and format that teachers are following. So they want to continue with their summer writing to align all of their courses and content areas with that model. Also, we have new textbooks that teachers will be, hopefully will be getting and will be working on through them, and also new course proposals, some of which have already been accepted by the steering committee, and I believe that's going to the board in December. The instructional program improvements, this is a large line too, a large increase compared to last year, because we have outside consultants who are experts in the areas of racial bias, the understanding by design, and social and emotional learning. And we've had some of those experts join us this year, and we want to continue working with them next year. The travel conference line is, well, it's up like $40. Yeah, $40, but it's $10,940. And that $10,900 from last year kind of kept it the same, because we weren't actually sure that, we didn't know we were going into the pandemic. The pandemic happened, we're still there. A lot of the conferences the teachers had requested to go to happen in the fall, and many of them have not. They've been suspended this year. Some of them are virtual, so we have sent teachers to those. We kept it about the same, hoping we'll be able to send people to the various conferences. And the instructional supplies, that went from 13,900 to 10,000. The 10,000 represents STAR assessment cost. It's administered in 7th and 8th grade only now. And the 3,900 is assuming we were not going, if we give the youth survey, the Amity youth survey, we're supposed to give it in the spring. We give it every 3 years. We wouldn't need to budget for that for next year. On the staff development, drivers include certain certified salaries, stipends, things like that. Instructional program improvement, again, more outside consultants. There's some overlap between the two sides. Other purchase services is a large one, and instructional supplies for the Readers Writers Workshop materials for 7th and 8th grade. So here's the breakdown of those drivers. And basically, the certified salaries and in-house presenters, that went down a little bit, small decrease, but it's still a very large chunk of the budget. And that includes all the stipend positions for staff development, the team leaders for the new teachers, the SRBI leaders, the, let's see what else I have here. Summer workshops, all the building technology advisors and consultants that work in they're the teachers that help within the buildings. They all get stipends. And then moving on to instructional, and also, I'm sorry, in-house presenters. So anyone who has been presenting at our weekly professional learning this year, they get a certain, they get paid for that. They get planning money for that. I think it's around $155 a time, but we had quite a bit of that this year. We want to continue for next year. We like to use our in-house. We like to balance it with the so to speak, gurus of the other areas, curriculum and anti-bias and social emotional learning. Instructional program improvements. This is to budget a little bit more money for the outside consultants for social and emotional learning. And that we've been working with Isabel Stevenson from the Connecticut Center for School Change. She's been excellent. We'd like to continue. The travel conferences on this line, this has to do with other additional conferences that teachers go to, and it includes other social emotional conferences, the technology conference. We had teachers go to the ISTE conference, which is for the technology combination and embedded technology skills through content areas. Also, the reading consultants have gone to EL workshops. We don't have a large population, but we do have EL English language learners in school, in all 3 schools. So that's what that accounts for. It went down a little bit. We also have some conference money we can use in the Title II grant if we get stuck. Other purchase services, this is a huge number. This represents Chartwell's. every time we have a full PD day, we, in my 8.5 years tenure, the superintendents have always supported giving the teachers, all staff, custodians, who's ever in the building that day, we have breakfast and we have lunch, and they primarily always met at the high school. So that's a large number. We have to think about that. If we're going to continue or not. I'd like to. I know the teachers really like it. And then the last one is a slight increase in instructional supplies, because these are for the supplies are for the readers workshop materials for the 7th and 8th grade teachers. We were going to start that at the end of last year. We were unable to do that. So we're going to have a kickoff in the spring, and we have outside consultants coming in to introduce the model to the teachers. The last slide I have is the textbook, the 5-year forecast. So this runs from 2021-22 budget, the budget we're working on now, right up through 2025-26. You will see in that first column, it's a pretty hefty amount, $294,000 for next year, for going into next year. Part of this reason is, and I hope the board remembers that last year we were able to lower the budget. It was a lower budget for the forecast because we were able to buy some of those books with end of the year funds that the board agreed to. This budget is much higher. We knew it was going to ramp up and move over to this line. And so we're working together. I'm working with I oversee this. I'm working with the high school department chairs, the principals, and the teachers to see where we can possibly, basically to prioritize the purchases going into next year. And that's it. So I'll stop sharing.
Okay. So I just didn't know if anybody has any questions for Dr. McPadden. All right, not seeing any, then I will ask Mr. Goodwin to share his presentation and the athletics budget for next year.
I'm sorry, Ernie, you're muted.
How about unmuting?
There you go.
I was being nice and staying. Okay, everyone. Sorry about that. We'll be presenting the athletic budget tonight, and our two main drivers are always our mission and our vision. And the big thing here is that we're providing a comprehensive, diverse program. Our athletics program is one of the most comprehensive and diverse in the state of Connecticut, and we service all the district schools, Bethany, Orange, and the high school. We offer 31 different sports with a total of 83 teams. We average about 1,200 contests per year. We have 110 plus coaches, average about 1,200 athletes, and we also assist in managing the unified sports, the flag football, and ultimate frisbee, which tonight was supposed to be the flag football game. Program success. We have a proud history at Amity, and you can see some of our successes there, which we aim to continue. So our athletics budget this year is totaled at $714,539. which represents an increase of 1.4%. Our athletics budget stays below that kind of magic number of 2% of the total district budget at 1.4% as well. Our increases come first from transportation. Per contract, transportation just goes up. Professional services, that's officials, our athletic trainer, and game time personnel, increase of 2%. And our other professional services account is increased. It's a big number, 41.7%, but it's really went from $5,000 to $8,000. Huddle is an online team video service that we have a service license for all our teams, and they're increasing their prices, thus the increase in the budget there. All other account lines are at a 0% increase. We would like some staff additions. Our first is an assistant field hockey coach. We'd like to align our field hockey program with other sports such as soccer, lacrosse, softball, baseball, who have more coaches for the numbers that they have. Field hockey continues to be our fourth to third largest team in the school, with this past fall, 72 registered students. The roster has averaged that for at least 4 to 5 years. We've also added middle school field hockey last year. I also am asking for a faculty manager. This is a seasonal position. With the number of high school events that we have all throughout the year, a faculty manager would assist the athletic department in managing our daily contests, helping with equipment distribution, collection, inventory, and this includes anything from field setup to checking in officials, maintaining spectator decorum, and post-game breakdown. I did propose some technology. Both the athletic director and the athletic trainer use personal cell phones all the time to conduct school business. We have to communicate with coaches, athletes, parents, officials who don't show up on the field last second. You name it, there's a lot that gets done on those phones now. And also a laptop for our athletic trainer, who uses her personal laptop right now to log injuries, search for parent contacts, approve student athletes for participation. She does the COVID screenings and all other technology demands. And basically, without the cell phone and the laptop, the athletic trainer really wouldn't be able to do everything she does in the time that we contract her to do it. She regularly is multitasking in her golf cart, on the phone, in her laptop, while taking care of all our needs for our kids and our teams. Last thing is our capital improvement plan. So our 5-year forecast, we would like to install warning tracks on our baseball and softball fields. This would be able to happen if our stadium is upgraded. We would no longer need the baseball, softball fields for field hockey all the time. We would use the still some of the fields for practice, but we could install warning tracks, baseball and softball, should the stadium be upgraded and field hockey can move their games over there. Replacing the portable bleacher stands at baseball and softball fields. We really have almost no stands at our baseball and softball fields. And it would be really nice to have bleachers at those fields. If you haven't had a chance to look at field number 3, the soccer lacrosse field yet, we put in the set of bleachers this past summer and fall, and they came out phenomenal. It has really changed that venue and really made it very nice. And then the last thing, which is out all the way out to 27, 28, LED lights at the soccer and lacrosse field. Again, it would be kind of like the last thing to put into that field to make it really kind of a championship type field. And it would be a great addition, especially come late fall when right now we're using diesel generators at the end of practices so that we can get our practices in. So that's all I have for the athletics budget. If anybody has any questions.
right, so I'm not hearing any. I can't see everybody to see if there's any hands raised. Hang on, just do a quick check. But looks like there isn't. So if there are no further questions, I'm going to ask Mr. Martoni to share his screen and give a quick rundown on the facilities budget.
Thank you, Dr. Byers. Okay, so for the facilities department 21-22 budget, looking at a few drivers that are going to increase the budget this year. The first item was going to be custodial supplies. The budget for custodial cleaning supplies and paper goods have increased by 5%. And it's due to uncertain market where we're seeing the demand for cleaning products increase, the cost of raw materials to make the supplies. And it's all due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In talks with our supplier, there's already been cost increases seen that we've incurred, and the projected forecast for cost is expected to rise. We're going to see a repair on the repair, maintenance, and cleaning line. We have 3 contracts that are expiring in June of 21. Fire alarm testing, fire extinguisher testing, and trash and recycling were all increased by 3% respectively in anticipation of a contract renewal. However, we will pursue a contract extension to try and hold the current pricing in the near future. Pest control, roofing service, as well as the boiler cleaning and maintenance were already reflective of a negotiated contract from last year, and we'll see a little bit of a price increase on those line items this year as well. COVID supplies, we added an additional line for COVID-related supplies at a total cost of $25,000 for all 3 schools, $11,000 for the middle schools, or $11,000 for the high school and $7,000 for each middle school. And these are just projected costs for additional supplies that are needed above and beyond our normal supplies for the year. You know, additional paper towels for cleaning and hand drying due to the warm air dryers being disabled, additional gloves, disinfectant cleaner, etc. One of the other drivers that we're seeing, I'm trying to back up one, is going to be utilities. Oil used for heating. Bethany's budgeted to use 20,000 gallons of heating fuel for the year. This remains the same. However, looking at energy forecast reports, there's an anticipation that prices will drop, but being this far out, I estimated a slight price increase. Natural gas, again, looking at the energy forecast, natural gas storage supplies are anticipated to be well stocked for the following winter, lowering the cost, but I kept the pricing at the same as the current budget in both for now, just as a number. We could adjust that as we move forward in the budget process. However, looking over at the average usage over the last few years, I needed to raise the consumption at Orange. The current budget at Orange is $26,694, and I'm going to increase that to $29,500. Electricity is another big unknown at the time. With the increased run times of the air handlers, but the limited usage of the buildings, we're not seeing a significant increase. So it's kind of hard right now to gauge where we're at for consumption. We did renew a contract with NG Energy, and that locked in our supplier rate until 2024. However, we're seeing an increase in the delivery charges. So in averaging the monthly delivery charge cost and adding then the fixed supply cost, we're going to see an increase in Bethany and Orange, but I was able to decrease the high school. Propane usage at Bethany is still expected to remain at 900 gallons. However, the energy forecast is showing that propane demand will increase and the storage supplies will decrease, driving up propane prices as high as an anticipated 6.9% over the current market rates. And when we talk about energy forecasts, there's a couple different websites that we use to kind of look at the forecast for the coming winter and what they're gauging. And some of them that we use, I kind of took a screenshot of some of them. But like this one here, it's showing natural gas consumption in the Northeast raising up 10%, but the price going down. Heating oil, the price increasing, but consumption going down. The same with electricity and the same with propane. So even though it's for the 2021 winter, it's still going to extend until the 21 into the beginning of the 22 winter. So we're going to kind of gauge our usage with these numbers for now. For cost savings, After reviewing the contracts, we were able to find savings in the security and testing inspections in the high school by $940. We were able to decrease the science lab hood inspections by $500, decrease the electrical cost at the high school by $6,000. And then in review of historical data, we were able to find savings in the custodial maintenance supply line, such as locker repair parts, lighting supplies, electrical supplies, lighting rental, etc., therefore offsetting that 5% increase in the custodial supplies. And we also were able to decrease the line for false alarm fees by $200. And again, as I mentioned, additional increased savings could be made if we were able to negotiate a contract extension with the vendors for the fire alarm testing, inspection, the fire extinguisher testing, and trash pickup for the 21-22 year, keeping this current year budget pricing. And I'm also going to look into the amount of pickups that are occurring for trash, and I believe that we could probably decrease those, therefore saving money there as well. The last thing I have is our capital improvement plan. And looking at the 21-22 year, we have some basic preventive maintenance measures, sidewalk repairs, pipe insulation repairs, the window film, and those are in all three schools. Looking at the high school, we have some control upgrades for the BMS system at the high school. Looking at replacing some piping on the cooling tower to replace that with PVC piping due to some corroding pipes. Got some repairs to the modular classroom in Bethany. Refurbished the athletic drainage on the field at Orange. And, we'll go over this with the facilities committee next month, and, we'll tweak this and find some savings in here as well. So that's all I have for the facilities budget. Okay.
And again, an opportunity to ask Mr. Martoni any questions if you have those. All right, so seeing none, we will turn it over to our two middle school principals. And I think Mrs. Burke, you're going to share the screen and let you present the middle school budget.
Thank you. Alrighty. Mr. Tracy, are you unmuted?
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Okay.
All right, so Kathy and I worked together to put together a presentation for you, a budget that's kind of comparable between the two middle schools. And to start off with, Kathy, if you can go to the next slide.
Yep.
We put up the mission statement. Obviously, this is the mission statement that's shared between the two middle schools. Amity schools believe that education is a cooperative effort that's shared by the school, family, and community. We believe a creative and a challenging academic program, one that has strong support services and varied opportunities and co-curricular activities best serve our students.
Thank you. Okay. Again, whoops, back one. Sorry about that. Again, much of this budget is built around the middle school philosophy, which is at the heart of everything we do at the middle school. Again, middle school is really designed to address the developmental needs of young adolescents. And when you think about quality middle schools, they always have a well-defined curriculum, organizational structures that support student connectedness to the school community, while recognizing that students at the young adolescents need continued support and connections with adults in order to grow and thrive. At the heart of every middle school model is the teaming structure, where groups of teachers work with smaller groups of students as really a little learning pod almost, that allows teachers to build strong connections with students and contributes to a safe and supportive learning environment. The 2021-22 Amity Middle School budget seeks to continue to support programs and structures that provide students with an exemplary middle school experience.
So this slide just shows the enrollment as it is currently in yellow, and kind of the projected enrollment for next year at both AMSO and AMSB. But of course, these numbers are in flux. For example, just at Amity Middle School in Bethany, we've added 5 new students since October 1st. And we have 2 more that I know of right now that are in the pipeline, kind of getting themselves enrolled or re-enrolling back in school. So we'll be up 7 students in just over a month and a half. But these are our best projections for next year. This shows the staffing. As you'll see, it's identical between the 2 schools. There are currently, as a cost savings or a way to effectively deliver the instruction, we have 3 shared staff members between Amity Middle School, Bethany, and Orange. There's a Chinese language teacher that we share between the 2 schools, a social worker that we were gracious enough to get last year on, and she's been doing a wonderful job working between the 2 schools, and a speech and language pathologist that we share between the 2 schools.
Okay, so much of the budget drivers for both middle schools really centers on the textbook cycle and where we're at in terms of textbooks for science, math, English, world language, and reading. You may notice that the math textbooks and licenses are attached to all the texts, because in terms of building in flexibility and what's more economical, we're finding that purchasing licenses for online textbooks is really the natural next step for many of the disciplines, in that, again, we've learned through this pandemic how vital it is to have that flexibility for a student to be able to access their textbook at home or in school. So it was just a natural extension of our one-to-one program. So again, these numbers, the totals, again, reflect Marie or Dr. McPadden's textbook cycle. So we're just planning for that. All right. I'm sorry.
Oh.
No, Jason, go ahead.
You're not here to kick me under the table like usual.
No, I'm trying not to.
So the increase here, you'll see these are our other budget drivers. If you take these numbers, kind of the end numbers here, and the numbers that are added in the textbook forecast, that makes up primarily, aside from salaries, the budget for the middle schools. So we've listed a few things here. And one thing that I want to take note of here is the 2 numbers that are the final numbers in white on the bottom under total, that Kathy and I have worked really closely to try to get those numbers aligned. And so if you look, you can see there's a certain line increases across the board for instructional supplies, for example, and that could be accounted for as teachers adapt to new ways of teaching, adding more online programs. And what we've done is over the course of this year, and kind of in an emergency rush, a lot of our teachers started using some of these online programs back in as early as March, and we started putting our stuff into these programs. So teachers were developing quizzes and online kind of activities for students, lectures for students. And then over time, those companies are smart enough to then charge you. And so our stuff is stuck in these programs. And so there's some budget increases in there to try to continue using those programs. And then some of those programs that teachers have found really useful, the increases account for the enhanced versions of those programs, not just the freeware, and kind of add more utility for our teachers to work with the students. A couple other things you'll see in dues and fees have increased, and that you'll find, I think you're going to find across a lot of the conversations that we have coming, is that organizations just raise their fees. And so for us to continue to belong to those organizations which provide our teachers with great outlets for professional conversation, we have to adapt to those increases. And again, like you said at the end there, the numbers, if you really, one of the things that we tried to kind of take a real close look at is the accounts where these, where this has been accounted for over the course of years. And so Kathy and I have worked to kind of make this overall number match up as we kind of work over the next couple of years to try to figure out how to make all of the line items kind of line up as we go through.
Okay. One of the major budget enhancements that we are requesting is a musical instrument replacement lease. So, you know, when a couple of years ago, our music teachers from both Bethany and Amity Orange did an inventory of the larger instruments. These are instruments, when we talk about the instruments, these are instruments that typically students can't transport from home to school and back. These are like the larger drums, the tubas, the large basses. These are instruments that in the past Amity has provided in-house. And when we looked at the inventory, the average age of the instrument, I think the average, they were bought in 1970. So most of our instruments are nearing the end of their useful life. And so our music teachers did a wonderful job researching, trying to find an economical way to replace these aging instruments, which are critical to having a band program in a middle school. If we were to replace all the instruments and buy them outright, it would be at a cost of around $400,000. In working with various companies, we have created, or we have the opportunity to explore a replacement lease, which in essence would allow both middle schools to replace all their musical instruments, the larger ones, for $100,000 each, or for a grand total of $200,000. Now, realizing that the $200,000 would have a major budget increase all at once, we are proposing that we explore the option to spread the lease out over 3 to 5 years. So if we were to do a 5-year lease, it would mean that each middle school would have to commit $20,000 a year over 5 years. And what we would get in return for that would be, as soon as we got the lease, we would immediately be able to replace all the aging equipment. So in terms of, you know, shoring up the program and providing students with the best possible equipment to participate in the band, we felt that it was prudent to move this forward, to ask the board to explore a little bit more. I do want to make clear that this would not be for the smaller instruments that students typically rent, like the flutes and the oboes and the smaller instruments. Those instruments students would still be expected to rent and bring back and forth. So that is, again, something that we would like the board's approval to explore a little bit more. Okay. So, you know, as we created the budget, we did create the budget and make decisions as to what to put in the budget, always with the Board of Ed goals in mind.
So there are a number of things in the budget that help to improve our instruction and cultivate student creativity and engagement. To highlight a few, obviously the textbook replacement cycle and moving towards more of kind of a digital area like Kathy was talking about is part of that. The enhancements to the band equipment is another one. In order to kind of have a highly functioning band, we need to have the proper equipment. We have some budget items in our proposed budget for some language testing, and that's to make sure that our students work in the world languages, specifically in Spanish, is aligned to the ACTFL standards and the things that we want students to be able to do and know and do when they get to the high school. And we have a lot of interesting initiatives that are in the area of STEM, and again, to provide our students with extracurricular activities. There's some items in the budget to support that. To address the effect, enhance the efficient nature with which we budget, you'll see that overall, when we, in a few slides, when we show you the final line, the number has gone up overall. But again, it's kind of due to this proposal for the musical instrument leasing program and a couple other items. But overall, there's no new requests for any new staff from either middle school. There's no requests for any new programs. And if you, again, aside from the music increase, there's little to no increases, and actually in some cases decreases across discretionary accounts in the school. If you can forward it, Kath.
There you go.
And then finally, to support a positive climate, we've worked hard to provide for budgeting for experiential learning for our students. This includes visits from authors, trips that are meaningfully connected to our curriculum, and workshops from outside groups such as the ADL for our students and staff. This budget and past budgets have provided our teachers to receive ongoing professional development and benefit from membership in organizations, and that's the dues and fees area, which again, not only enhance our overall climate, but they can contribute back to board goal number 1, which is to foster creativity and enhancing student engagement by engaging our teachers as well as our students.
Okay. So our final slide really looks at the bottom line. And we did want to highlight the fact that, you know, when you look at the grand totals for what we've requested outside of salaries and benefits, again, when you look at the 2021 numbers in comparison to the next year's budget, there seems to be a large increase, but again, the increase is due to number 1, the request for the music lease proposal, and number 2, the money that was spent on textbooks last year that was used to drive that budget figure down. As we talked about last year, that was going to have a long-term impact and kind of bounce. It was expected that this year's figures would go up substantially because of the textbook purchases that were made at the end of last year. Okay, does anyone have any questions?
I do, just a quick one, if you don't mind. What's the deal with the jump in professional services spending at AMSB? Is that just bringing it up to parity with AMSO in the past, or what?
That's the addition of an intern, and we've had that in there before. It's been in there for years, and we put it back in there this year again, anticipating that we might have a need for an intern next year, should we be allowing interns back into the building.
Okay.
So the intern programs, they really do help supplement our substitute teaching force. And they're kind of, you sort of have to have a partnership, because there have been times in the past where we've budgeted for interns, but then we don't have any interns who apply and want to work for us. And so then that sort of disappears. But then at the same time, when we do have interns who are interested, they actually make excellent people to have in our buildings, because they can serve as substitutes, but they come to us with substitutes with a significant amount of training already in an educational preparation program. So we're able to use them in a much more supportive and productive manner for our students. So it's always a matter of sort of having a delicate trade-off between budgeting for the interns and hoping that they express interest. If they don't, we just usually end up having to supplement whatever we intended to do with them with substitute teachers, because that's often the function that they serve for us in our buildings. So I'm not seeing any more questions. I do want to reiterate what I think Mrs. Burke summarized so nicely, and that you will see repeated throughout the course of these presentations. And I remember it very clearly from last year when we did reduce the budget to get it down to an amount that was supported by AFC and the board and our towns. We did make significant reductions to our textbook budget at that time. And we were able to still continue our programming because we were using end of year funds to purchase the textbooks. I do remember at that time, both Mrs. Loomis and I did sort of caution that that was one of those situations that would come back around and the board would see it again because it would create some rather large increases in textbook lines for the following year, which is what we're seeing. And, you know, to Dr. McPadden's point, she will continue to work with department chairs to see what it is that we are able to purchase and what's available. But at the same time, it's going to be something that will just keep sort of rolling down the road until we kind of correct the course of the ship that we, you know, sort of set off kilter last year. And certainly it's something that's pretty critical to our instructional programming, making sure our students have and our teachers have the teaching and learning resources that they need.
Can I ask a question about the instruments, about the lease?
Yes, and then I see Dr. Turner's also raising her hand. So
Oh.
I'll moderate. Mr. Brow, you can go first, and then I'll
Well,
acknowledge Dr. Turner.
And she already had a turn. I mean, you know, of course. So if buying brand new were 400,000 and leasing were 200,000 roughly, what does the lease get us at the end of lease life? So is it a 5-year lease? Is it you know, lease that you end up owning for a small amount at the end of the life of the lease? What's the, or do we get onto a treadmill there of, you know, every 5 years we're doing another major lease, which is then more than it would have cost us if we had just treated the instruments or bought them and treated them well, which can be difficult, obviously, but we have insurance for things like that as well.
Mrs. Burke or Dr. Tracy, you can clarify, but I believe it's a lease to own program, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's called a lease program, but I think it's kind of improperly labeled lease. It's more of a deferred payment program. You've signed on that you're going to buy these instruments essentially, and that you commit to this 5-year, 6-year, 4-year long payment. However, they set up the terms of the payment, but it's essentially a loan. You're loaning it, and you own them at the end. At the end of the payment, they're ours.
So do you still end up spending more, 400,000, or do you? No, it's less than that. Yeah. So how are they? Yeah. So usually there's a residual amount that you'd have to buy at the end, and it sounds like this gets around it somehow.
I don't know all the technology or the technical parts of how they do it. It might have something to do with depreciating the instruments as they go along. The company may lease them, call it a lease to depreciate the cost of them. Again, it's kind of way beyond my financial understanding, but that at the end of it, as far as what we've been told from the teachers who researched it, is that at the end you own it. You make these payments out over the cost of whatever it is we sign up for, and then you own the instruments at the end.
Okay.
And I do think it's different. We've sort of accustomed ourselves to the idea with the leasing program with the one-to-one devices. And of course, everybody knows they have sort of a finite shelf life, and then they become obsolete in this world of technology. I think the good thing that we've probably proven is musical instruments. Once we purchase them, we do keep them for quite a while. So there's actually a fairly good return when we put an investment onto a musical instrument that it's going to be ours for, you know, dozens of years. But by the same token, you know, it's an expensive cost at the initial purchase. But then hopefully we get a good 22, in some cases, 30 years of life out of that instrument.
Right. Yeah, no, that sounds great. And that's why I wanted to make sure we weren't giving something back that has that longevity that we have come to expect in certain instruments. And obviously repairs can be made and there's a cost to that, but it just didn't make sense that we were getting it basically at half cost then. That's what doesn't make sense to me. So if someone can look into it, maybe let us know later.
Sure.
Thanks.
And Dr. Turner, you had a question.
I do, going back to the textbooks. I'm really sorry, but I have never understood why purchasing what I assume this year's textbooks on last year's leftover money would mean that we have more to spend this year. Did it take the entire thing and move it forward? Like, why is this rebounding on us? I just don't get it. I'm sorry. If you could explain, I very much appreciate it.
I can take that one if you want.
Absolutely, thank you.
There's two things. One, the current year's budget is very low for textbooks. So when we talk about the increase, we're really talking about it's just such a large dollar increase compared to the current year's budget because we drastically reduced the current year's budget by purchasing books at the end of last year. So we're just talking a large swing. If we had looked at what was forecasted for the 2021 budget, the current budget, to next year's, we would still see an increase, but it would not be as significant as we are seeing because we made the purchase at the end of the year. Okay.
Thank you. That makes sense.
You're welcome.
And are there any other questions?
Okay, I don't think we see any more. So I think this was a really good idea to do it this way, Jen, Dr. Byers, this year, and to have the insight of all the individuals that spoke tonight to give the board a really good feel to see what we're up against and to see what all of you are up against with the things coming up for your next year. So is there a way, Dr. Byers, that we can get this shared with us, this presentation from tonight, so that we can look at it at another time as well, and also the future ones, so we can have those?
So absolutely. So this whole meeting will be recorded for posterity on the YouTube channel and will be available for as long as we would care to look at it. And then the actual copies of the presentations themselves will be part of the board packet that Ms. Pero will prepare following tonight's meeting. So you'll have both of those.
Okay, that'll be very helpful. Thank you.
Dr. Turner, do you have another question?
I sure do. I remember last year you were thinking that this year was going to be really rough and come in at something like 6.9. Is it still looking really bad?
That's pretty much, so again, this is our first go, but if I'm not mistaken, Mrs. Loomis, that is exactly what the number is right now, 6.9.
Okay, good luck. Thank you.
That's a remarkably good memory, Dr. Turner.
Okay, well, seeing no further questions, I think we can move on. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and your work on the budget. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you and speaking with you again soon. The next item on the agenda is item 4, the COVID-19 updates.
So I am happy to share my screen for that one. And this isn't going to look too drastically different from things that I presented to the board in the past. So I will actually skip through some of this, just looking currently at our current data. And again, it's just to give you a point of comparison. You can see where we are currently seeing cases, primarily at the high school. And of course, every time we see some cases at the high school, we end up with, or anytime we have cases, we end up with more individuals quarantined. Actually, our numbers of quarantined students and staff at the high school are going down now that we've been in a period of remote learning. So in many cases, some of the positive cases have actually occurred since we have gone remote, while students are not actually in the building, and while staff are voluntarily coming into the building, we are continuing to see people test positive. And again, I think that speaks to the concept that we've said all along, that it's community spread and it's not school spread that continues to result in the positive cases we see. I think the other thing that is important to note too is that if you do have an individual who tests positive and they are within a program, for example, like the Amity Transition Academy, or if it happens to be somebody who's a member of an athletic team, your number of quarantined individuals also goes up, because when we are unable to actually, we are able to contact trace, but when the contact tracing results in us believing everybody was a close contact, you end up with a far greater number of individuals quarantined. And again, these represented cases literally up to about 2 o'clock this afternoon. I believe that we have since and during the course of this meeting had another confirmed case. And so I am sure we will be following up and reporting out on that tomorrow. But it is kind of the current snapshot of what was happening at 2 o'clock this afternoon. You've already seen this slide with respect to Addendum 4. So just to review the data that came out last Thursday, you can see that the number of COVID infections per 100,000 individuals per day has certainly increased in all 3 of our towns. It's no secret if you look at the map, everybody is in the red, and the average of Amity being at the 22 number. It still supports the hybrid learning, but it's definitely on the higher side compared to our previous weeks. And you've also already seen that slide. So again, just as a point of comparison, you can see the percent of positive tests has definitely started to go into an upward trending pattern. Again, no surprise there. And when we look at our other secondary indicators with respect to the hospitalizations, New Haven County is now in the high zone, as is every other county in the state of Connecticut, with the exception of Tolland. So several health department meetings since the last Board of Ed meeting. So on November 12th, we had our regular BOA Health Department meeting, and they continue to support in-person learning. They continue to support the hybrid model in Amity for all 3 of our schools, and also had made the recommendation to continue to have full in-person in the elementary districts. Between basically my meeting on Thursday with the health departments and by Friday evening, we had received a significant number of confirmed positive tests at the high school. That was resulting in a significant number of individuals who were quarantined. So Friday night, we had an unscheduled call with the health districts and myself. And it was during that call that they made the recommendation that at least the high school move to remote learning through November 25th. Again, knowing that we were already planning to be remote after Thanksgiving. Then we continued our regular weekly meetings last Friday on November 20th. And again, they continue to recommend the hybrid model in the middle schools. That is really due to the very low number of individuals that we have seen in the middle schools that are testing positive. And again, we are able to isolate those folks who need to quarantine fairly quickly and easily. And they continue to support the remote learning the week after Thanksgiving. That will be for all BOA schools, including the elementary schools. And we will reassess on Friday, December 4th, 2020, which I realize doesn't give families a lot of time to make adjustments or plans, but it would be inappropriate to sort of plan for anything too much in advance, because we really don't know what the state is going to be like on December 4th. However, a couple of the recommendations that we have discussed and that have received support from the health districts. On October 19th, we returned all of our students who had IEPs or who were in Spartan Academy or who were English language learners to full 5 days a week learning. Again, parents still have the option to keep their students remote, but we did offer the 5 days of learning to these groups. They could also keep them in the hybrid model if they selected. And so after consultation with the health districts, after looking at what percent of population is actually physically present in the school, they are supporting that we can make that same offer to students with 504 plans, that if families wish to have students attend for 5 days a week, they can. We also have looked at all of the students who currently have 2 or more Fs in their classes, and we will be offering to return to full in-person learning those students who are failing 2 or more of their classes. It is interesting to note we are seeing a fairly big difference between the students who have voluntarily opted out 5 days a week versus the students who are attending in hybrid. 11% of our opt-out students, so basically 1 out of 10, is receiving 2 or more Fs in their classes, whereas only 2% of the students who have been learning in the hybrid model are receiving 2 or more Fs. And so we really do believe that it's probably the right thing to do to at least return these students for whom the hybrid model is clearly not working, and to allow them a chance at academic success if that is something that they are interested in taking advantage of. In either case, even if we bring back all of these special populations, special ed, Spartan Academy, English language, 504 plans, and the students who are academically at risk, our population density is going to remain at or under 50% based off of our attendance records through the fall. So that was supported by the health districts. We're saying we're anticipating December 7th. Again, please remember the previous slide. We review everything on December 4th and figure out what model we're moving forward with after Thanksgiving when we have the most up-to-date data. Another thing that has been recommended by the high school leadership team is that we eliminate the midterm exam period this year at the high school, assuming that we would still be operating in the hybrid model, and that the hybrid model basically would require us to have a 2-week exam period to get all of the students to take the exam in a secure environment in the in-school sessions. That's a pretty long time to simply be testing students and not instructing students. Given that there's already significantly less face-to-face instructional time in the hybrid model and with the shortened schedule, taking more of this away simply for the point of offering midterm exams did not seem to make good instructional sense. So we would be looking to have Q1 and Q2 each weighted at 25%, which is still half of the year-long grade. And then quarters 3 and 4 and a final exam would be weighted the same as they would under normal circumstances, and we'll see where everything is come June. The last thing, which I believe I sent a message to the board, but again wanted to make clear for the public, is the CIAC did postpone the start of winter sports to January 19th, which is after the Martin Luther King holiday, and it is the point in time when several districts have already stated that they would be remaining in a remote learning model until that date, which makes it a little challenging to have winter sports when you don't have students in school. So this will be published, I believe, by several, if it hasn't already, by the principals in their newsletters. It is a tentative calendar for November and December. Again, it is assuming that we go back into a remote learning model on a hybrid learning model on December 7th. We've identified the couple of days that were already planned early dismissal days. That would be the 12:12 dismissal instead of the 12:47 p.m. dismissal. And again, we're going to look at December 4th as the opportunity to speak with the health districts to determine if this is actually a possible learning model that we can do, or if we have to have a different plan. And so my apologies to the families who have to wait until kind of last minute, but that is sort of how we operate around here right now. So that is the COVID update.
Okay, with my mini iPad I can't see everyone's face, so I can't see if anyone has any questions. So Dr. Byers, if you see anyone, could you please acknowledge?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So any questions from anybody? All right. Oh, Mr. Brow, I see you there. Hello.
So I know I'm asking for a prediction, but if you had to predict, is it going to make sense to go back between now and Christmas, before the new year, based on where you're seeing the trends, where we're at the numbers, it's probably not gonna work out, right? We're talking about the springtime.
You know, I have
January.
to say that our health districts were both, I would say, cautiously optimistic that actually their belief of being able to kind of get the high school hopefully to be somewhat under control. And then definitely that 1 week after Thanksgiving, I think that they felt that we had a fairly good chance of returning back to some format of in-person learning. But I think we have so little knowledge right now of how the Thanksgiving holiday is going to impact the community outside of school. They believe that we're taking the right steps to get us back into most likely the hybrid learning model, but I'm not 100% convinced that everybody outside of the school setting is taking the right steps. So I don't know where we will be. I do know that, and just from a rational standpoint, the reason why the Martin Luther King weekend has been selected by so many districts as kind of their potential, return to school date is it just happens to fall 2 weeks after the winter holiday break, where you have Christmas and Hanukkah and New Year. So their rationale was that if you sort of quarantine people for that period after the holiday break, that would be when students could return to school. So that's why you hear that thrown around a lot. Our health districts have not to this point supported the 2 week break. They feel that the 1 week that allows that 7-day incubation period really sort of captures most of what we need to do to be able to get students back into school.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Sure. Any other questions? Mr. Previn.
I had a quick question. I know you had mentioned previously about BINEX testing. We heard the Governor Lamont's press conference today talked about expanding that to other schools. Is there any update on that?
We asked again at our last health district meeting, and the health districts continue to feel that offering BINEX testing at the school would simply encourage sick individuals to come into the school to be tested. And our whole philosophy is if you're sick, you should not be coming into the school. And so we checked with both of them and neither was supportive of it. It also requires, a particular level of training on the part of the staff. And frankly, we are already barely managing the contact tracing and the phone calls from parents who have symptoms and just want some reassurance of what they should do and should they keep their kid home, and trying to maintain the list of staff who are either quarantined or potentially ill and getting tested. I don't know that we have the staff to actually appropriately do BINEX testing. And certainly not at the middle school level where we only have one school nurse. But then if you add in the size of population of the high school, I think that would be a challenge too. But mostly our health districts they don't want sick individuals in the school building just to get a test. And if you've seen the lines that are out there for testing, it would be a really easy solution to have people get tested.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, well, Dr. Byers, thank you for that update. And if there's not any other questions or anything else to discuss, I think we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
I saw Ms. Cardozo.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favor?
I see lots of hands raised, and I'm going to assume that that's unanimous. So that's awesome.
Yeah, great. Great seeing everyone. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Be safe, and we'll see you on the other side of the holiday.